Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to ShortSalePowerHour.com. I'm Kevin Kaufman, my partner Fred Weaver's behind the camera today. We're Group 4610, Arizona's premier short sale team. This guy hanging over my shoulder right here, I think you know who he is by now, Coach Collard. What's up, Coach?
Keep your horns up.
The horns are a little saggy this year, but that's okay.
Well, it's Tuesday. We don't know.
Because you might quit on your team called the Raiders. But
oh no, I'm not quitting on my team.
Okay, just making sure.
I don't actually have a second favorite team.
Right. Well, I'm just letting you know horns don't.
I'm not double-minded. I'm
not either.
Fully clear of
I'm not
my
either.
team is.
If you're confused about that, Coach said that he's now a Cardinals fan as well as a Cowboys fan.
No.
Which I say is impossible. You can only be single-minded, not double-minded. If you're double-minded,
see, that breaks the outback. Nothing's impossible. You're so contrary. Talk about double-minded. Anyways, this is what we're talking about, mindset. So we're just taking shots at each other because we love each other. But here we are. We just finished up the B of A event on Monday up at Brian Gubernick's office, the Keller Williams office up at 96th and Ironwood. And our previous video with myself and Fred, we were covering mindset, and we were talking. We were pretty much attacking agents for the lack of mindset and their ability to think, right? And so we challenged them to pull their head out of the sand, that type thing. And I know we all have that issue, but some of them in this room today had a real issue. So let's go into that, though, and let's cover some of
None of you watching this, though.
Certainly not. So, yeah, not anybody that was watching, just people that haven't watched. But Gary mentioned some things today that we'd like to touch on, and he gave us the mindset Outback solution. And in fact, he talked about the Outback himself.
He actually said, you got to go Outback, which shows some massive influence. I'm just going to say, I'm not tooting our horn. I'm just saying that's a massive influence in VP of Bank of America. You got to go Outback sometimes to get things done in the short sale world. So we actually had a question asked about what happens when sometimes we know it's the best deal for the bank, but the negotiator just doesn't seem to get it.
Right.
And he actually pointed out to the fact that, yeah, you know what? Sometimes you have to fight. Sometimes you have to work your way up to somebody like me, because you and I can have a discussion around it and see that it's very clear, whereas the employees that you're dealing with on a daily basis have guidelines and restrictions that they have to work within, and so they literally don't have the empowerment to see those
and
solutions.
He didn't say it like, but he did insinuate that they're not necessarily at the level of solutions thinking that he'd like them to be, only simply because they're more proceduralized and more following the order of things.
Nor are they given the authority.
Well, that's pretty much, he didn't
authority.
say it, but that's what he insinuated.
Right. Procedures and authority. So, I mean, you guys, if you haven't got this yet from us enough, and I don't know how many more times we can say this, how many different ways we can say it, you've got to escalate. You've got to go Outback. You've got to be willing to be told no. You've got to be willing to be told you're an idiot. You've got to be willing to get hung up on 17 times in a row. You have to call back 712 times sometimes to find out the BPO. Sometimes you got to call back 712 times to get the yes.
And you know what? I'm not a huge proponent of this, but sometimes you got to be like Fred and actually be willing to lose your salvation on a deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I say that very sensitively and lovingly.
Sometimes you've got to be willing to ask that negotiator if they have to raise their hand to go to the bathroom.
That's it. That's
Why?
It.
Because you might rattle somebody just enough to the point where you get to go on to that next level.
Because it's an unperfected system, guys. I mean, it comes down to this. This one lady, and God bless her today, she just really didn't get it. She was so hung up on how do I get, and it's not about how. It's simply, are you willing to do what it takes to create the solution you want?
So our buddy Brian Gubernick, who put this on today, he was at an event. He was being interviewed by Gary Keller not too long ago, just a few weeks ago, in front of about 6,000 people. And Gary said to him, when they were talking about negotiations, Gary Keller said to Brian Gubernick, hey, aren't you worried about upsetting these bank employees? And Gary said, or Brian said to Gary, he looked at Gary and said, no, I'm way more concerned with my seller's possible foreclosure than I am hurting that person's feelings.
Wow.
I'm not trying to hurt that person's feelings, but I'm way more concerned with that possible foreclosure than I am hurting his feelings.
Right.
And you know what, you guys, if you're not willing to be that and be that tenacious, refer your deals out. Seriously. Because
or if you think you've got the skill for it and you just haven't learned the mindset of it, search back on this video here. Look in the search and go to November 9th, 2009 and look up that video. It's on a Monday, and it's all about the Outback. The Outback gives you the mindset to shift into that conversation.
So guys, as a viewer of this video today, I've heard you give one good takeaway from Gary Haygood. He said that the negotiator doesn't always have the authority or the ability or whatever you want to call it, the empowerment to be able to make decisions on files, and that it's okay to escalate when necessary.
Absolutely.
In fact, he said if after 48 hours you haven't heard anything, it's okay to go to that person's team lead.
Absolutely.
He said go to their team lead and then whoever beyond them, each with 48 hours.
What did you learn today about broker price opinions from him and disputing them? Not that it's nothing that we've said on the show before, but repeat for our viewers what he said.
He quoted you.
He personally said, I want listing history. I want to know how long it's been on the market. I want to know how many showings you've had. you know what? If you've got other REO comps or something in the neighborhood, I want to know how long those have been on. If you got active listings that support your offer, how long have those active listings been on the market? You guys, he's asking for more information that he doesn't currently have. And if you haven't picked that up from watching the show by now, I don't know how else he'd across you, but you've got to be able to show them something that they don't currently know about.
He said, tell me a different story or a deeper story.
Exactly.
And then he referenced, hey, and then when you run into something that's not letting you buy that, go up the chain. I mean, he said it, guys. He said it. And he pretty much brought up that point of the outback.
So, I mean, you guys.
What else did he talk about? Real quick?
Can you guys talk around guidelines? Because he talked about some commissions today, and he talked about some guidelines, but we also asked him a few questions, and he came around on a few things.
Yeah. My interpretation, real quick, and you can add on to whatever, but he basically said guidelines are lender specific and investor specific within Bank of America. We already knew that, right?
Yeah.
But he did reference as well that they're almost like speed limits. Like, that's the general spirit of the guideline. There are exceptions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we were clear on that.
Yeah, there absolutely are exceptions. At the end of the day, it's loss mitigation, guys, which equals what's better for me. Is the short sale better than foreclosure? And sometimes if getting paid a 7% commission, you know what? Sometimes paying somebody 7% commission is better than paying an REO agent 5% commission because you save 150 grand or whatever the deal is. So we did say there's absolutely exceptions. There's guidelines and there's exceptions to those guidelines, even in commissions, guys. So I know a lot of you think, well, I don't want to do short sales or I don't want to do any more short sales because I only get 5% commission. I'm telling you right now, you can have 6% commission as long as you're willing to fight for it.
Amen.
I'm not saying it's always going to be easy, but if you're willing to fight for it, 6% is yours. Go after it. Go get it.
This is a napkin, by the way. Like, you can't preach better than that right there. Pastor Tom didn't even cover that kind of material. That was awesome. Go get your 6%, guys.
All right, so while these guys are laughing or I'm laughing, couple quick notes that I got. One of those notes was that Gary said that B of A owns about 25% of all, services about 25% of all loans in the country. We've heard that number as high as 30 to 40. He said 25. And he said of the loans that they service, 20% of them are owned by them, meaning that B of A is the investor.
They have the decision.
And 80% are other investors. So I thought that was some pretty interesting information.
Some of which of that 80%, they do have delegated authority, but he didn't clarify
But it's
a percentage
restricted.
of that.
He actually didn't say how much they own. What he did say is they have decision making on 20%. That other 80% could also be in that 20% could be loans that they don't own, but they're totally delegated on. And in that 80%, there's a whole plethora of things in different delegation levels. Sometimes there's no delegation level, things like that where they have to actually go out. So you guys got to understand that means 1 out of every 5 short sales you send to them is a decision they can actually make in-house. The other 4 have to literally be sent to another company for approval. So,
and that contributes to the slow, ineffective process that we sometimes
well,
experience.
honestly, it contributes to the frustration level of the agents who don't understand the whole process, and they don't understand why, even though the BPO's back, it's still going to take another 2-3 weeks to get the deal approved.
Right.
So,
and knowing your craft, like me and Fred talked about in the last video, that's going to be the key to
it's
this.
essential.
You got to know your craft, guys.
If you don't, the more you understand, the easier this game gets.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Hey guys, last thing before we wrap up. Gary gave some stats on how much B of A's grown as far as how many employees they used to have in short sales versus today.
Gubernick was on the show a few months ago, and he talked about how Matt Vernon came to town. Matt said, we're looking to grow from 1,500 employees to 3,000 employees. He said
By the end of this year.
And they're already, guys, at 2,800 employees today.
As of today, October 7th.
Yeah, it'll be like October 12th when they're watching this. So they're already at 2,800, guys. They're so close.
He covered that they've got a unit down here in Chandler, obviously in Simi Valley, got stuff in Richardson and Plano, Texas, a new place in Jacksonville, Florida, Wilmington, Delaware, a place in Pittsburgh that's opened up, and of that there's 2,800 loss mitigation people, and they're amped up, and they're even looking to grow more. He just doesn't have stats.
They're going to grow more on that, you guys, and what that means is more communication from the bank, from them to us. It's going to mean shorter processing times and a whole bunch of other good things to come. Not saying it's going to get easy overnight, guys, but what I'm saying is they're definitely trying. And you're not going to know how much they're trying unless you're trying too. You better be working twice as hard as they are. Otherwise, it doesn't matter, and all this progress is going to be not when it comes to you, when your deals.
So translate that to the spirit of the season, the spirit of football season. Get your game face on, up your game, learn your craft, shift your mindset. Put on the Outback, and let's do this.
Absolutely. Ready to wrap it up?
Let's do it. 1, 2, 3.
Short sale power hour. Short sale power hour.
Keep your horns up.